right, guys, so welcome back to Lifestyle Blueprint. Please welcome special guest and a friend of mine, Nadia. And I'm going to let her introduce herself so I don't screw up the intro. But thank you again, Nadia, for coming on to the podcast and to speak about kind of like your life journey and where you're at right now.
Awesome. Thanks, Jordy. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm honored to be here. My name is Nadia, like Jordy said. My full name is Nadia Kashetsky. And a little bit about me, I'm from the East Coast, and I'm currently living in Newfoundland in St. John's. So yeah, that's just, hi guys.
True. Tell them who you are, like what you're doing right now.
Yeah, so right now, I'm currently going to medical school at Memorial University of Newfoundland, also known as MUN. I'm in my second year, and right now I'm just chilling in my apartment because it's all things COVID, and we have some reduced clinical duties. So I'm spend most of my time either at home or running right now, and sometimes I am lucky enough to get to go into the hospital. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Awesome. And you're a second year med student, right?
Yes, I'm in my second year.
Perfect. And then, so just like to kind of take it back to undergrad, can you tell me where you went and what program you took?
Yes, absolutely. So going way back, when I graduated from high school, I did that in St. John, New Brunswick. And then I applied to a few universities for my undergrad. And those I think were McGill, Acadia University, Dal University, and UNB, which is the University of New Brunswick. And as the funding rolled out, I decided to go to the University of New Brunswick. And I did my Bachelor of Science in kinesiology. That's what I graduated with. I started the first year I did basic science. I hated it. So I transferred into kinesiology, which is still technically a Bachelor of Science, but something I was more into. So yeah, that's where I did my undergrad.
Sure, that's awesome. And with your undergrad, did you, I guess, from that point on, did you have any inspirations internally or externally that you wanted to pursue medicine from that point on, from being an undergrad student?
A little bit, yeah. So I guess when I was growing up, my dad was an artist and my mom was a nurse. So I was, I guess, into art and healthcare as a young child, because I feel like you're just exposed to what the people around you are exposed to. So growing up, I wasn't that talented into art. So I kind of focused more of my attention towards healthcare. And my mom always told me if she could go back and do it again, she would go into medicine. So that kind of, that saying kind of grew up with me, and I kind of had my eyes on medicine from a young age. My dad was always in and out of the hospital as well, so I felt like I had some exposure at a young age as well. But I took a bit of a long route to get there. I think a lot of people take longer routes nowadays anyway, but yeah, so in undergrad I did have my eyes on medicine. And I wrote my MCAT after my third year of university, and I completely bombed the MCAT. I was like, I'm a failure. It really hit me hard. Like, I had all these friends that were doing really well on it, and I did it and I just didn't do well. So then I was like, I took a step back and I was like, you know what? Maybe this isn't for me. And I kind of started putting my attention elsewhere for a couple of years. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Nadia's super humble, but she won't mention she's also a physiotherapist. So we'll talk about that too.
Yes,
before she came. Yeah.
I guess I'm not registered right now, but I have my master's in physiotherapy.
Yeah, and I guess that's like how we met at the hospital. You were a physiotherapist, and I was kind of doing research on the floor, on the cardiac floor. But yeah, we'll talk all about that for sure. So can you tell me, so you can tell me about the experiences in that program at UNB in kinesiology and how it prepared you for, I guess, future schooling?
Yeah, so I guess at UNB Kinesiology, it's a really supportive program, and it's really practical, and that's what I liked about it. So one big thing that I did there that I think prepared me was I just did an honors, which I think a lot of people that want to do further schooling do in their undergrad. So I did a really practical honors looking at different types of squatting and how it can improve your performance. So I think that really prepared me for grad school. And yeah, I just had a good foundation, deciding to pursue physio from my Bachelor of Kin. Let me just say, coming from a more practical background, that I don't believe that you necessarily need to do like a pre-med degree to get into medicine. I think as an undergrad student, you should do whatever you think you're going to excel in. And there's people in my program now that have like a PhD in music, and like they did completely different routes. So I think if you're like me and told that yourself that like you need to go into sciences and you need to do med chem, and then you get in there and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is brutal. Some people love it, but I
Yeah.
don't think you have to force yourself to go that route.
True. So that
Yeah.
undergrad for sure prepped you for physio therapy school. So how did that work? So you said you took your MCAT third year, but then you ended up kind of like taking steps back and going into, I guess, physio. So can you tell me the process getting into physio for the listeners?
Yeah, so what happened there was I was also an athlete in my undergrad, so I swam for university and I had some exposure of physiotherapy, and a lot of my friends were going into physiotherapy. So I kind of asked them, like what's like why physiotherapy, and they all gave me really good answers, and a lot of it was about like there's a business side of physiotherapy. There's a lot of teamwork to physiotherapy. There's like a lot of collaboration and communication, and problem solving, which are all things that are involved in medicine as well. So anyways, I just thought it might be suited for me. So the application process for physiotherapy when I went through, which I guess was 4 years now, for most schools, it was just a straight up application and transcript. I don't believe most schools required an interview at that time. So I had put an application into Queen's, Western, and Dalhousie. Queen's and Western did an interview, but Dal did. And then I decided to go to Queen's.
And yeah, go Queens. So can you speak to me more about Queen's University and its physiotherapy program? And yeah, kind of tell me more about that.
Yeah, so Queen's Physiotherapy is an accredited program. For a physio program to like move forward in Canada, has to be accredited. So it's a great program. It's a fairly small program. I think there might have been like 64 in our class, so it was really small. Everyone was so supportive. It was not a competitive environment at all. The staff were like extremely supportive as well. And there were some really good mentors. A lot of the staff were really young and they could really relate to the students. And the placements for physiotherapy were also great. Like I did a placement at KGH where I met Jordy in acute cardiac care, and that was wonderful. And then I also was able to go up to Northern Ontario for 6 weeks and do like a very rural placement. So I think Queen's has like a really, really good program. I think a lot of the programs for physiotherapy are great, but I was really happy with the education and the quality of the teaching at Queen's.
The PT program, obviously it's like a theoretical basis where you go to lecture, like you said, you learn things. How did that stuff that you learned in lecture kind of translate over to you applying it in the acute care setting when you were at KGH?
Yeah, so and when I was at KGH, it was a cardio rest
Yeah.
placement. So we did a whole block on cardio rest things that PTs could do. So it's a lot of like movement after surgery and just like rehab basically after cardiac trauma.
Yeah.
So it was really applicable to just kind of go in and do your thing as a physio.
True. And I know you're like a med school student now, and you're aspiring to, I don't know, I guess we'll figure out what you want to pursue in terms of like the disciplines of medicine. But I guess, do you know the scope of a physiotherapist and what limitations they have within the healthcare setting? Because they are an allied healthcare worker. So in your experience, in your placement at KGH, what can they do and what can they not? Like, what can they not do?
Yeah, so in my placement in KGH, it was more of a rehabilitation role. So it was like a lot of respiratory secretion clearing and movement after surgery. But physiotherapy is so much more than that. Physiotherapists have the ability to diagnose and treat musculoskeletal conditions. So, you know, if you hurt your shoulder, you can go to a physio and they can tell you, you know, exactly what they think is going on and how to manage it. So yeah, so I think that's wonderful. I think that's a lot of things that encompass into the scope of physiotherapy. But there are a lot of differences between, you know, the scope of physiotherapists versus the scope of nurses versus scope of medicine. So I think there is also, you know, there's a lot of overlap, but I think they can also be very different.
True. And I guess we haven't jumped into like the medical school side of things yet, but since you are in your second year, do you think a lot of the physio education has overlapped with some of the med school stuff?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. For some things, like our MSK unit was wonderful for me because I kind of knew everything. And
Yeah.
MSK musculoskeletal stuff is really hard to kind of grasp your first time around, I found anyways. So having that fresh in my mind and kind of knowing already how to diagnose all these MSK conditions, I feel really put me ahead for that block. But in medicine, you know, MSK is only one block, and physicians can always refer to physiotherapists to do
Yeah.
that more particular diagnosing. So I think it was helpful, but I think every degree helps you in a little bit, and I don't think it really put me ahead on anything.
True. So transitioning away from physio and you graduate, tell me that process or that journey from, I guess, upon graduation of physio into med school now that you're a med school student.
Yeah, so in my second year of physio, I kind of went through the application cycle for medicine. So I wrote my MCAT again for the second time. The second time I took, yeah, woo. Are you writing it?
What?
Are
Am
you
I
writing
writing it?
it?
No, I'm
Yeah.
not. No, no, I'm
um,
not.
yeah, for me, it was a brutal exam, especially from my background of, you know, kinesiology. But anyway, so I wrote that, and then I applied to Dal, Memorial, and McGill, and then I interviewed at all three, and then I went to Mon. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that was kind of an interesting transition because I was still completing my physiotherapy degree and like knowing that I kind of wanted to do something else. So
True. It's nice to hear the perspectives from each medical student and even residents of their take on the MCAT. And you were just saying it was brutal. Can you tell me why it was brutal and what challenged you the most from the MCAT?
yeah, I think everyone has a different opinion on this. So take what I say. This is only my opinion.
Yeah.
But just coming from my background, we didn't have a lot of money growing up, so I couldn't afford to take, you know, a whole summer off to study. I had to like continuously work. So what I did the first time was I was working full time. I was still trying to volunteer. I was still trying to swim, and then I also wrote the MCAT. And I couldn't afford to like pay for courses or like even paying for the MCAT was expensive. And I was in New Brunswick at the time, and they don't hold the MCAT sitting in New Brunswick, so I had to fly to Halifax and like stay in Halifax. So it was just like, it was quite a bit of money. And I felt like, you know, some students might be at more of a disadvantage than other students to
Facts.
write the standardized test. So yeah, that was just my opinion on the MCAT. And I also feel like the first time I wrote it, I wish I knew so much more, you know, but yeah.
True. And then the second time around, obviously you're in med school now. Did you learn from your first bout with the MCAT? Like, what did you do differently this time around?
Yeah, so what I did was I talked to a bunch of people who wrote it and did well. And I was just like, you know, what did you do? And how can I implement that? Because obviously the first time I did it didn't work. So what I did was I took 2 weeks off from physio school, and I was like, I'm not going to take any more time. I'm just going to take these 2 weeks. So I just studied in 2 weeks. I only used Khan Academy and no other resources. So I did it for free. And then I just wrote it and I did well enough to apply. So
That's super
yeah.
impressive. Proud of you. That's awesome. So now you're in med school, your first year student. Tell me your first your experience at med school, I guess.
Yeah, so med school at MUN is wonderful. I think that it's often overlooked from people that, you know, aren't on the East Coast, just because it's in Newfoundland, and like, where is Newfoundland to everyone else, you know, in Canada.
Yeah.
But I think it's a wonderful school. It's so supportive, and we do have spots for people outside of the East Coast. One of my friends from Kingston is in the program with me.
That's awesome.
So yeah, she's great. But anyways, MUN is like a super supportive school. I find it like not competitive between us. Like, it's extremely supportive. We have like counseling staff for us. Like, I find we just have a lot of resources. I find the docs, they know all of us, because there's only a limited amount of docs here, right? I feel like that it might be different
Yeah.
than in other centers. So yeah, I could talk about how great MUN is all day. I've really been enjoying my time here so far.
That's awesome. So can you tell me about kind of like the academic changes from undergrad physio to med school? Like, how much more difficult is med school than like undergrad or even PT school?
Yeah, so I guess just putting it into perspective, like an exam in undergrad would be like how many lectures? Maybe like 6 or 9,
Probably
maybe.
like a midterm would be like 6 or something. Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, like 6 or yeah. So then that would be a midterm. So then you'd have 2 of those a semester.
Yeah.
And then in physiotherapy, there was about 16 lectures on an exam. So that's like almost double,
Yeah.
you know? And now that we're in med school, it's like 55 lectures on an exam. So I think that's just the big jump, is like in undergrad, you can know all the material inside and out if you study hard enough, you know? And then in physio, it was kind of a shock because I'm like, I don't think I can actually know all this material inside and out. And now in medicine, I'm like, there's no way I can know this all this material. Like,
Yeah.
let me just try to pass. So
True. And
yeah.
then I guess with the evaluation, is it pass and fail, I guess, or is there like um a minimum grade that you need to meet for each exam for you to kind of just pass?
Yeah, so I think every school does it differently. So I can only speak from MUN, but we have exams like every 5 weeks, and they're on a certain block. Like, we'll do like a cardio block or a neurology block, and they will be a multiple choice, usually case-based exam, and you have to get a 70 on it. If you don't get a 70, then you're put into the group of people that didn't get a 70. And then only 8 people have to rewrite. And if you have to rewrite multiple times, then you get held back a year. So
True.
yeah.
And then in terms of blocks and what you have been learning in the last 2 years, what has been the most difficult block in terms of the discipline of medicine? Like, was it neurology, cardiology? Can you kind of tell me about that?
I think it would definitely be different for every person, but
Yeah.
for me, it was biochemistry and immunology. We had that block first, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like this again. So yeah, that was for me. I find like everything medical just more practical. I find if I can actually conceptually understand it and have it be applied practically, I can kind of grasp it better. So
True. And then I guess within the last 2 years, have you had any clinical experience? I don't know at all, but based on a lot of individuals, I guess, have you had any chance or opportunity to work clinically with doctors at the hospital as a medical student?
yeah, absolutely. So I think obviously every program's different, but for MUN, what they do is you have mandatory shadowing for family physicians in your first semester. So I think we went to 6 different family physician sites, family physician offices. So that was awesome. That was like right off the bat, you're in clinic shadowing. And then after that, you kind of get matched to whatever you want to shadow. So yeah, like in the first month or two, I think I was like in with gastro, and then I was in with anesthesia, and then I was in with urology. So you can basically have as much experience as you want. I know my friend the other day she was the first assist on like a 4-hour cardiac surgery, which was like
Good.
super cool. Yeah, and she's just in second year. So I think MUN does give their students like a lot of opportunity. I don't know how it is in other schools, but there's lots of opportunity here.
That's awesome. So maybe even because kind of like a smaller faculty, smaller student body, and like the doctors knowing all you guys, it may be such an advantage to you guys to getting that exposure, right? Because I would say at U of T or something, there'd be so many medical students that filter through that these doctors don't really know. So I think it's valuable that you're getting the experience that you're getting based on like, I guess the correlation between students and the ratio, I guess, between students and doctors.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely it. You know, there's less of us, and there's also less learners too. Like our residency programs are much smaller. So, yeah, there's always they always need hands on deck from the medical students, which is great.
True. I wanted to ask you, has COVID-19 impacted your education? Because you got to experience it full time without COVID-19. And now, second year, COVID-19 is peaking and it's everywhere. So, has it impacted your education and your delivery of education?
I think we are really lucky in Newfoundland that our cases are so low, that things are kind of operating more as usual here. And I think we're also so lucky, like our year being in second year, that, you know, we weren't doing traveling electives at this point. So those didn't get canceled for us. And, you know, our clerkship wasn't delayed, because we're still in our second year, and we weren't just entering med school. So we didn't miss out on that social opportunity as well. So to be honest, like I feel so blessed that I'm in my second year of medicine, because I feel like if it was to happen in any year, I feel like the second years really have it really good. I feel like I can't complain at all. And I feel like it really hasn't affected our education. We still get to do clinical skills, and now instead of being in a big group setting, it's one-on-one, which is wonderful. You get more attention from the docs than you did before. So I think if anything, it's been good for our year. People might disagree with me, people that like to go into class, but you know, I like to do it on my own time. So I find my education hasn't been hindered at all.
That's great. And have classes been online, or is it like a blended model where you go into class and also stay at home and do lectures online?
Yeah, so basically our clinical skills is in person, which is great. It's just you go in, there's 3 people in the room. It's you, a standardized patient, and a physician. And you do like 2-hour-long sessions going through clinical skills. So that's in person. And then everything theory is online, which is great, and it's all recorded. So yeah,
Which you love.
love it.
So basically, what kind of tips and guidance can you give for like an aspiring or a prospective student going into first year medical school?
That has already gotten in.
Yeah, that has gone in.
Well, everyone is different, but I think the biggest thing that I learned was that if you can do the lectures on your own time at 1.5 speed, I feel like that saves you so much time. You know, with that much material, I feel like you have to be efficient. And personally, I don't find going and sitting for 8 hours a day, with a lot of like lag time, to be efficient. So I guess I feel like I can't tell people not to go to class, but you're going to class, you're just doing it on your own time.
Yeah. All right.
Mhm.
True. So you being a busy person and like being in med school, do you have any techniques or I guess any outlets that you use to kind of like deal or cope with stress or kind of like anxiety of med school? Like, how do you deal with that?
I definitely rely on my partner. We talk a lot about what's going on in my life. I think it's always important to have people that are close to you that you can just explain how you're feeling like at all times. Because I think if you keep some of this heavy stuff that you see inside, it can really build up and affect you kind of long term. So I think having like healthy relationships that you can talk with is something that I've relied on. And another thing I've relied on is just running. I just love to run. I run every day, and that kind of keeps me, with myself and kind of like in a meditative state for like an hour a day. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
So you are in second year now. Do you have any idea, or are there any fields of medicine that you're super interested in pursuing further on when you specialize, or I guess when you match?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a hard question to answer.
Yeah.
I'll tell you like a couple strategies I've been using before I like tell you what I'm thinking. So I've had a couple people tell me different strategies, like how to choose what you want to do. For some people, they come into medicine and they know exactly what they want to do, and I'm not one of them. So some people say to, decide if you want to do medicine or surgery because they're completely different, and go that route. And then there's a couple of specialties like ophthalmology, dermatology that you can kind of do a little bit of both. So there's that way. And then one of my friends who's a resident told me this really interesting, gave me this speech. And he's like, Nadia, do you want to be a doctor or the doctor? Because there's some specialties where like you can't just be a doctor. Like if you're a neurosurgeon, you're like the doctor.
The
You're like
doctor.
the big guns, Like, do you have a personality to be the doctor, or like are you okay just with being a doctor? Like there's a lot of you, like you're absolutely wonderful, but you don't have that like personality that you have to like dominate. So anyways, those are just a couple strategies. I think I was a little bit in the middle between surgery and medicine. Like I like a little bit of both. I like working with my hands, but I don't think I could be, the doctor all the time in surgery. So yeah, I thought about urology for a little bit, but I think that's too surgical for me. I was interested in dermatology for a bit. So yeah, I'm still open. I'm still ruling out things. I think it's easier to rule out than rule in for me at this point.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess you got 2 more years left, and you got a lot of time to figure it out still, and like what you're passionate and like what you want to pursue, right? So that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love that advice your friend gave you though. The doctor or a doctor. That's cool.
I know, he's funny, and he's an emerge doc. So I'm like, which
Okay.
one are you? And
Yeah.
he's like, I think I'm a doctor. I'm like,
True.
okay.
Until trauma
Okay.
comes though,
Yeah, exactly. You kind of have to switch it on and off, I guess,
right?
in that
Yeah,
position.
for
Yeah. So
sure.
yeah.
True. Oops. Um. So, do you let's talk about like varsity, I guess, and like undergrad and varsity. I know we're kind of jumping ship from med school to that, but tell me your experience as a varsity swimmer and then keeping up with full-time studies.
Yeah, so I swam for UMB for 4 years, and then I swam for Queens for one during my physio degree. And I found swimming just absolutely kept me grounded because I had that structure from such a young age, always swimming and always exercising. I felt like I needed to just keep going. It was kind of routine at that point.
Yeah.
And I think like when I stopped swimming, I just kind of filled that time with running. So I feel like it's just something that's ingrained in me. And I know you do a lot of exercise as well. So I feel like you can relate to kind of
Used to.
just always having it there. Used
Yeah.
to.
I used
Yeah.
to. True. That's awesome. Um, so I guess kind of growing up, did you have any role models or anyone you looked up to that has like guided you throughout your life so far?
I would say growing up, it's just always been my mom. she was the only one in the family in healthcare, and like we didn't have any doctors in the family or anyone else in healthcare, so she was kind of my shining light that I kind of followed and aspired to be. So yeah, I would say my
Nice.
mom.
Nice. That's cute. So, do you have any tips or guidance for individuals who are interested in medicine and want to get into med school?
Yes, I have a couple tips. One would be read the med forums online. Read, I think it's called Med Forum, and then Reddit. There's so much good information out there of people who have, you know, gone through this experience multiple times and have been successful. And I think reading and talking to people that have already been through it is just so important. I think the first time I went through it, I kind of had the attitude of, you know, I have great extracurriculars, I had a great GPA, like I think I have, you know, my shit sorted out and like I don't need help. And I think I absolutely did need help, and I needed to talk to a lot of people. And I think that's the pitfall that a lot of people make is like not wanting to share what they know because they think they have it all figured out. But I think you can always, you know, learn from other people and share your experiences, and it's so beneficial. So if that is like reading Reddit, which I think is so valuable, or like talking to your peers that are also going for medicine, I think that's so important. That's my biggest tip, is just to talk to people and
Mhm.
read the internet.
True. That's
Yeah.
awesome. There's a lot of great information on Reddit for sure for anything, honestly. But what makes a super good candidate for like the baseline, like the minimum? Like, um, what are the combination of things should individuals look for or get experiences in before applying to med school?
Yeah, I think every school looks for a little bit something different, but I think like unfortunately the standard things that you have to have are like a wonderful GPA, and also like wonderful extracurriculars. And when you're picking your extracurriculars, absolutely do something that, you know, you're really passionate about and that you can talk about, and it makes you really happy and excited. Because interviewers, if you get to the interview stage, they'll pick up on that, and they'll understand like you're really genuine. So I would go for extracurriculars that you know you're really passionate about, but also keep in mind that there's certain aspects of and skills that interviewers are looking for when they look at the extracurriculars. So I know you've had some docs on here before. Did they ever talk about the CanMEDS roles?
Yeah, I think so, but they didn't really say the roles. But do you know them? Do you know them off by heart?
I hope so.
This is a
Yeah, so
test.
I know. Yeah, so I would try to pick, you know, do things that develop your skills as a leader. So for example, like a captain of a team, or like starting a company, or starting an initiative, or starting this podcast like you're doing. Like those are all leadership things. The next one is a communicator, so anything with a team would look great on a resume. Another one is collaboration, so you want to work with people that have different roles than you and that you can like work synergistically with to accomplish the same goal. So like I guess any experience in healthcare, any experience, you know, partnering with another company or partnering with another initiative. So that would be collaborator. And then there's advocate. And advocate, I find sometimes is the hardest one to develop, because you're kind of like being someone's voice kind of, and lifting them up
Yeah.
and, you know, providing them resources. So I feel like that one could be a hard one. I found I got a lot of experience with advocacy and physiotherapy, and also, you know, in some other initiatives. I know Revved Up in Kingston is a great one for a lot of those skills. But yeah, so that's advocate. And then there's scholar, which is the research component. So med schools, you know, like to have critical thinking and research experience on your application. And expert, so medical expert. And that one, if you're an expert in something particular, they love that. You know, if you're like, for example, if I'm really into running, then, you know, I could be like, I just would be really passionate about this one thing and know a lot about it. So that would be expert. I think that's all of them.
That's awesome.
Did I just pass the test?
I think you
I might have
did.
missed one. I might have
And
missed one.
but it was great explanation for each of those points to help I guess students who aspire to be a med student and a doctor. So that's awesome. Thank you, Nadia, for that.
You're
Um,
welcome.
do you have any tips for the MCAT? I guess you said it was kind of like more logistical things for on your end, but studying for the MCAT, like how should someone study? But I know it's different for everyone. But how did you study personally for it?
Yeah, it's definitely different for everyone. My background in biology and physics, those two sections were not great. So I spent a lot of time on those two sections where I think as someone with more of a science background might find them easier. And then psych I find is an easy section. I left that for one day to study for. And then critical thinking, that section is, in my opinion, just very difficult. So what I did to structure my studying was I did critical thinking every day. There's a few sites that you can kind of get passages to your email like every day. So I think I would do like 5 passages a day or something,
Okay.
and make sure that I was understanding what I was doing wrong while doing my answers and getting them wrong. And then when I got stuff right, I made sure I understood like what I was doing right. And then psych, I just left, like I said, for one day. And then the other 2 blocks I would study for the majority of the day for.
True.
And I guess like one other tip I would have for studying for the MCAT is like do as many practice tests as you can, because I found that there's like pattern recognition that can come up. So like they'll always test like maybe similar questions on the biochemistry stuff, and you'll start to see what the high yield information is. And there is so much information that when you can start pattern recognition on what is high yield, like that is so valuable because you can spend more time understanding that stuff. So
True.
mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. And then kind of jumping into, I guess, med school, you as a student, how many hours do you spend a week like studying for on various things like exams and stuff?
Yeah, so I I would say I work probably 10 to 12-hour days every day. But it's not always on exactly what we're learning in school. Like it's either, you know, in shadowing or doing research in a specific area or doing like a project with the foundation. It's not always like school. And that's what I love about medicine, is that you can do so many things. So yeah, so I usually say we have a 5-block week. I usually spend like the first 3 weeks just like doing things outside of medicine, unless we have mandatory clinical skills. And then the last 2 weeks, I will go really hard, like 14-hour days, and study the material. I think the way I do it is much different than some people. A lot of my friends love to go to class. They do like 8 hours a day on learning medical stuff, and then they probably have a little bit of a better balance in the evenings. But yeah, I like to break up my blocks as like 3 weeks doing medical non school stuff, and then 2 weeks doing just academic school stuff.
True, nice. And then I was kind of curious about clinical skills. What are the coolest clinical skills that you've done so far as a med student?
Yeah, clinical skills are great. I I guess one of the coolest skills we've had. It
Like,
was really yeah, pardon.
sorry to interrupt. So, like, what skills have you done, I guess, in the last 2 years, being a first year and then now second year? Like, what were you exposed to?
Yeah, so we learned how to do the cardio exam, and then we learned how to do the respiratory exam, and then the GI exam, and then the neurology exam, and then the urology exam. And we still have a few exams left. So yeah, the clinical skills is much different than like shadowing. You know, clinical skills is like you go in, you learn how to assess something, and then you kind of get tested on it. And versus like clinical skills are like going in and seeing real life. Sorry, shadowing is like going in and seeing real life stuff, you know?
True. And then within the clinical environment with the patient, have you been exposed to kind of doing clinical things with them, I guess? I don't know, like putting an IV in, or like, are you allowed to do that yet? I was just curious from a perspective of like of a second year student.
Yeah, I think every shadowing opportunity comes with a different opportunity. So I personally haven't put any IVs in yet, but I know some of my friends have. It just depends on, you know, which doctor you're on and who you're shadowing. Some docs might be like, you go in and do the rectal exam, and you're kind of like, okay, you know, like I guess I've learned it clinically, you know, but
Yeah.
I haven't had any of those experiences where I've had to put an IV in or anything.
True, true. Well, that's awesome. I do want to thank you for this talk. We're not ending yet, but we're kind of like we're gonna line up the mood, and it's gonna be some quick shooters, some fun questions. But I just want to thank you for being a part of this podcast so far. It's been a great conversation, and I thoroughly have enjoyed it. And just hearing you speak about medicine. So, can you tell me your 3 to 5 artists that you listen on the daily? Your top 3 artists, top 5?
Okay, I'm very into like Petit Biscuit. I don't know if I'm saying that right. And Shalou, and whatever's hot on like the Apple Music workout playlist, you know. Um, who else do I listen to? Sorry, this isn't rapid fire.
It's okay.
I'm just like a random whatever's hot, you know?
True, true. What's trending,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
True. With your busy schedule, have you been able to watch any TV
Oh
shows?
yeah, absolutely.
What shows?
Um, I love trash TV. So, you know, like rewatching like episodes of The Love Island UK, or The Challenge is on right now. So I'm really into that.
So all reality
Um,
TV shows.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Uh,
um, yeah, I guess I've watched Your Honor. Have you seen that one that's coming out?
no,
That one's very good. It's kind of heavy though. Yeah.
true. And then I just want to ask you about running. Like, I hate running. Okay, hate's strong word. Like, I dislike it. But um, what? Why do you find so much joy into like in running, and like I know it's been a good outlet. You said it's been a good outlet for you, but what do you enjoy the most about running?
I find running to be very rewarding. I find that you can always improve, and you just get such like an adrenaline rush. I find like when you're pushing your body to its limits. I think it's, you know, it could be the same with any type of exercise. Running just kind of fits with me. And then once you get into like all the paces and all the distances and stuff, like I find it really motivating and rewarding. Like when I ran my first ultra marathon, I was like, you know, you do 50K, you're like, you may as well, like, I can do 100K, you know? So,
Yeah.
and I think it's like a very cheap sport. Like you just need a pair of running shoes, and it's very portable. Like I would love to like just go run ultra marathons, like in different countries. Like yeah, I just love it.
Have
I don't know
you?
if that's an answer.
No, that's a great answer. Have you ran any marathons or half marathons?
Yeah, I've ran a couple. I was supposed to run the Toronto one last spring, but that was canceled. And then yeah, I've ran the Toronto half before. And then I've ran like a couple East Coast ones before. And yeah, my first ultra was this fall. It was called the East Coast Trail 50K. So
Yeah.
that one was fun. It was like in the cliffs and the mountains, so it was fun.
No, no, that's cool. But the fun part, I guess, fun for you. I would not do that at all. All right, so I just want to say thank you, and please everyone give it up to Nadia. She's been a great guest, and she speaks
Thank you.
highly of her university, her med school, and I love that. And it's amazing from where you have kind of like your journey so far, undergrad, PT, and med school. You're super humble and super
Oh,
hardworking.
thank
And
you.
thank you for this conversation. Truly appreciate it. And I hope that the listeners appreciate it as well, because you give great insights and great knowledge, and you drop great knowledge. Yeah, drop great knowledge about kind of like the tips and the guides to getting into med school, and even just like talking about your experience so far. So thank you so much again.
Thanks for having me on, Jordy.
No problem.